And there's something about the artistry of what's being done fitting the story that's being told so perfectly that those are the things that we stick with. That's the reason with the poetry for you. It's the reason with the art for me. I'm looking for, where are you from the painter? Where are you in here?
Yeah.
And why? Why is this how you're saying it?
Yeah. Welcome to the Habit Podcast, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Jonathan Rogers, your host. Russ Ramsey is an old friend. We met in an American Idol fantasy league in which we immediately became rivals. But also, Russ is a serious thinker and a gifted storyteller about many things, especially art, an area in which he is a trusted guide. His new book is Van Gogh Has a Broken Heart, What Art Teaches Us About the Wonder and Struggle of Being Alive. In this episode, Russ and I talk about sunflowers, the sublime, and the connection between suffering and wonder. Russ Ramsey, so glad to have you back again on the Habit Podcast.
Great to be back.
So we're talking this time about Van Gogh Has a Broken Heart, the sequel to Rembrandt is in the Wind.
Yes.
I was trying to get a rise out of you. Is this a sequel? Is this part two?
It is. It's funny. It is a continuation of.
Okay.
It's very similar. It's another 10 stories. General format is about the same. The covers imitate each other.
Yeah.
There's a cool little Easter egg in the design of the way that they made the two covers play together. So yes, but this one's a little bit more focused on sorrow and suffering, and how suffering and wonder play together.
Suffering and wonder.
Mm-hmm.
I would not have known to put those two together.
Yeah, that's kind of it was a theme that emerged as kind of after the fact, as I was looking at the way the stories were coming together.
You say that it's not a sad book, but it's full of sad stories.
Yes.
Did I have that right?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, it's I think it's what story doesn't have sadness in it, and what great story doesn't have great sorrow in it. That I remember having a professor once say to me that every story at its heart is essentially a redemption story, which I'm not exactly sure is true, but it was I've always kind of used it as a foil to kind of think, is this a redemption story or not? And I think these stories all to get to the beauty that people will travel far and wide to go stand in front of. There's a lot of tragedy and a lot of sorrow that kind of made up not only the subject matter of a lot of the art that we look at, but made up the story of the lives of the people who gave themselves to making it. Mm-hmm. And so whether it's Van Gogh or Rembrandt or Artemisia Gentileschi, who's in here, there's just
I
so
want to
much.
get to her. That's an amazing story.
She's a fascinating person. Yeah, but there's so much of the ache, I think, that makes us want to go be in the presence of things that arouse in us a sense of wonder, are directly responding to the longing that we feel for a world that's filled with it, as opposed to the experience of a world that's filled with so much brokenness and pain, too.
I'm sorry. Say that again. We ache for a world that's full of wonder.
Yeah, we ache for a world that's full of the kind of, even more full than the wonder and beauty that we go to stand in front of when we go to an art museum. That we feel like we're going to a place where we feel like the best in terms of beauty and visual storytelling that the world has to offer is gathered in places like this, and so we go to those places to stand in front of them and feel and learn and wonder and marvel. But we do that in the context of a world that's full of all kinds of suffering and pain that we're bringing in, and that we're also experiencing from the person who made the work that we're looking at.
Yeah, so their sorrow, their suffering gave rise to this thing that's beautiful and evokes wonder.
Yeah, every single Van Gogh painting you look at is sad. Every single one, because he was never not sad. Like even his sunflowers. I have a friend.
I was about to say, that was what I was about to go to. How's the sunflower sad? What do you mean by that?
When you think about it, there's this early floral painting that he did that's full of like peonies and roses, and then there's like a lone sunflower, and he's kind of he hasn't found it yet. But when you think about sunflowers and you think about Vincent, they're very similar to each other in the sense that sunflowers are not really beautiful. They're thorny, they're rough, they're jagged. The petals are kind of this sort of they're like little feathers. It's not something that takes your breath away when you see it. And so even in the way that he paints them, they're all kind of like jagged and crooked and kind of struggling, and they're designed to just kind of follow the sun, and they're lanky and tall, and they're a lot like him. They're when you and he even had he even said once, he was quoting, he was talking about other painters, and I forget which the other painters were, but he said, this painter has the peonies and this painter has the roses, but the sunflowers are mine. Like he understood that there was something about the connection between that particular flower and his particular life that made him paint them 7 or 8 times. Yeah.
And there's I never put it together till you just said it, but that the way they fought, that yearning with which they follow the sun, is these ragtag things are just and maybe are they so tall because they're yearning, so they're stretching so that they're in danger of actually toppling over. Like ours back here completely fell over. In their longing for the sun, they kind of overstretch themselves.
And then they're not pleasant to hold. They don't, they're just kind of they're rough and compelling all at the same time.
Yeah. All right. So you have alluded to the idea that it is through suffering that more beautiful things get made, or that as artists live through suffering, there's a deeper well for them to draw from. And maybe a good case study in that is Rembrandt. You wrote about Rembrandt's 2 versions of Simeon. Yes,
he has these 2 paintings, and they're both fairly well known in the Rembrandt body of work. But they're both paintings of Jesus as a child being presented in the temple, and Simeon. It's at the end of Luke chapter 2, and in one, the first one that he did, he was 26 years old, I think. And he's basically putting on a clinic for everything that he is capable of as a painter. So it's got dazzling architecture. There's 24 people where you see all of their different faces. They're kind of standing on these stone steps that are kind of functioning like risers, and then there's this trick of the light that's coming down and shining on the Christ child, and Simeon's hands are raised in praise, and it's this dramatic scene. But it's also kind of cold, and it doesn't have a lot of heart. But he's, the way I like to say it is, with this painting, he's kind of winking at the viewer and kissing his bicep, and but then he paints it again. One of the last paintings that he ever did, painted at the year that he died, of Simeon being presented Jesus being presented in the temple, and Simeon, and all it is an old man holding a baby. And there's a woman in the background who may be the priestess Anna, and they think that she was added later, so that maybe not even he painted her into it. And it's this warm. It's really, really dark, and the brushwork is a lot more mottled, and it's kind of an orange. It's almost the colors that you would think of like a fire by a hearth, and that painting he did after just suffering, just a lifetime of suffering, financial woes, the death of his beloved wife, very complicated relationships with women after that, the loss of children, and the repossession of a lot of his materials and personal possessions as well due to bankruptcy. And he's buried. We don't know where he's buried. He's buried in a in a hospital cemetery from the 1600s that has since been a million other things. And so they know generally about where he would have been buried, but there's no Rembrandt grave. But when he gets to the end of his life, the story he's trying to tell is not the story of the young man with the world in front of him and endless possibility and let me show you what I'm capable of. It's more of it really looks like a painter who really all he wants to do now is hold the Christ. And it's a really poignant thing, but you see when you know his story, you're like, oh, the way he got from this to this is through suffering and loss, and the breaking of his heart.
Yeah. You do you as a judge of art, do you prefer that later one than the?
Oh yeah, it's got so much heart. It's I feel like he's showing you what he can do. Yeah. And in the later one, he's showing you who he is. Yeah. And he's telling you a little bit more of the story of his own life. And so, for me, I much prefer, because with the one he did in his 20s, it's impressive to look at, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with it when I look at it, other than marvel at the capability of the painter. But he gets himself out of the way with the other one. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if you can help with this, but speaking as a person who isn't nearly as sophisticated with regard to art as you are, I like being impressed. Right? When you said, you talk about I saw the picture in the book, nice little plates in the middle. We should mention that.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Free art.
Full color insert.
You pay for a book, you get art.
You get art, and it's the stuff that is it's the works that are referenced the most in the writing. Yeah. So they're not just a random collection, but if I'm writing at length about a particular painting, odds are it's in color in that middle.
Yeah. But anyway, speaking as a person who I like to look at pictures, but I don't consider myself a sophisticated viewer. And you describe the 20 people. That sounds like more fun than looking at one person with a Christ child. Right? I am impressed. And I mean, it's sort of like when I was younger, I am somewhat sophisticated when it comes to reading poems, let's say. Yeah. When I was younger, I was really impressed with sophisticated poems. Like I was impressed with John Donne, just because what he did was so impossible. Right. And then I reached a point where I was like, I'm not as interested in sort of his razzle dazzle. Sure. Now I'm coming back around. There are things I love about Donne that I've learned to love. Yeah. But I had to get past the being impressed with the razzle dazzle. And I think when it comes to art, I'm still a little impressed by the razzle dazzle.
You say you are, but when I'm in your home right now when we're recording this, and when I look at the things that you put on the walls of your home, it's not razzle dazzle. I mean, I'm looking at a painting of a alligator, it's on your wall because of who you are. It's part of the collection of your life. It's part of the story of your life. I think about, because I am too. Like, I love to stand in front of paintings that just kind of are just kind of seemingly impossible in terms of as an achievement. How was their hand so steady? How are they able to to do all that? But the ones that we want to live with. Yeah. When I was a kid, it was the era of big hair metal, and one of the features of big hair metal was the guitar solo. Yeah. And one of the features of the guitar solo was the showcase of what this guitar player for whatever the band was capable of. Yeah. And as a kid, it was jaw-dropping. Yeah. But
you always love the noodly doodly. I prefer the runka runka.
I don't even want an explanation of what that means. I'm just going to sit with it.
You know what that is.
Yes, I know. It's onomatopoeia. It's perfect. It's perfect. But I'll tell you this, that when you listen to the guitar solo at the end of the Eagles' Hotel California, it is a perfect piece of music to fit the composition of the song. That people can sing the guitar solo to that song as much as they can sing the lyrics to that song.
Yeah, it's true.
And there's something about the artistry of what's being done fitting the story that's being told so perfectly, that those are the things that we stick with. That's the reason with the poetry for you. It's the reason with the art for me. I'm looking for, where are you from the painter? Like, where are you in here?
Yeah.
And why? Like, why is this how you're saying?
Yeah.
And so, like, MC Escher. I loved MC Escher as a kid. But it's math. I'm looking at math. That's all that is. It's math. Like, you don't tear up when you look at MC Escher. You say, wow, cool.
Yeah.
And then you want to show it to somebody else to say, isn't this cool? And I hope I'm the first person who showed this to you so that I can get credit for being, But man, Rembrandt, Van Gogh, these painters that when you get their body of work, Paul Simon, same kind of thing, right? Like when he was a young man, a lot of he was very brash and a lot of arrogance and a lot of just kind of let me show you how clever I can be and kind of cutting and in charge. And now he's writing, hymns and psalms, and it's much more spiritual and he's humbled.
Yeah.
And it's just that to me, I love that about art, especially when you get the arc of the story of somebody.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the Mona Lisa for a minute. I did not know until you told me that the Mona Lisa wasn't all that well known until after it had been stolen.
So when I was setting out to write this book, I was thinking to myself, in order for me to make a second book on art appealing, I've got to have some gateway to entry here. So I got to write about something that people know.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'll write about the Mona Lisa. Here's the problem. Here's the problem with writing about the Mona Lisa. I do not like the Mona Lisa. Here's a second layer of the problem. I don't think anybody, if they're being honest, really likes the Mona Lisa. But then that got me curious as to, so why is she as celebrated as she is? And why does the Louvre have like a special, glass case? Why should she get her own wall?
Yeah.
It can't be because of the painting itself. I mean, listen, if you're listening to this podcast, just be honest. Do you love the Mona Lisa? And don't start saying things like, well, she has that enigmatic smile. You've been told that.
Yeah.
You've been told to appreciate her enigmatic smile. Why? Because we're grasping at straws for why we love the Mona Lisa. Maybe it's that. And so I thought, well, okay, I'm going to...
Also, her eyes follow you around the room. There's also that.
Right, as does any painting that's oriented toward, as do 75 other paintings in the Louvre. But so I thought, well, okay, maybe I'll tell some story about the Mona Lisa. And I thought, well, maybe I'll tell the Monuments Men story of how she was protected from the Nazis during World War II. And something, I don't know. And as I started to research her, I started, all the articles started referring to this heist in 1911, and I love a good art heist.
Sure.
And it turns out she was stolen from the Louvre in 1911 by a person who worked inside the Louvre, who on a day where the museum was closed but the work crews were all there, he just put her under his arm and walked out. And she was hanging on a wall with 30 or 40 other paintings all crowded around her. There's a photo of what it looked like in the book. There were paintings above her, but she was low enough and small enough that she could fit under his arm and he could walk out with his coat draped over her. And and so it wasn't until she went missing that people began to flock to the Louvre to see where she once had been.
Wow. And
so people would lay flowers on the floor underneath where the painting had been. And the telling story was the Washington Post in America, obviously, wrote a story about it and published a picture of a Da Vinci painting that was not the Mona Lisa.
Okay.
It's called the Mona Vanna.
Okay.
It's a nude woman. It's like a same portrait, but she's not wearing any clothes. It's a completely different painting altogether, but they had it listed as the Mona Lisa, which tells you nobody knew what the Mona Lisa was in 1911. So how did she become famous? She's forgive the crassness of this, she's a Kardashian. She's famous for being famous. Yeah. She was stolen at a time when the global newswire was becoming more and more of a thing, where people were getting news stories from around the world, where true crime was becoming a kind of a genre. And so here you have big museum in Paris, very famous painter, painting goes missing, mystery, intrigue, story gets told around the world. People go to the museum to see her. One of the funny things about that story that made me want to write about it was one of the suspects of the theft was Picasso.
That's so funny.
And the reason, I'm not telling you all the story here, but the reason Picasso was arrested was because Picasso actually was in possession of stolen items from the Louvre. And the reason he was in possession of stolen items from the Louvre is because he was part of a group of anarchists in Paris, one of whom loved to go to the Louvre and steal things. And so he would say to the group, like, "Hey, I'm off to the Louvre. Does anybody want anything?" And he came back with this Iberian bust of a head that he gave to Picasso, and Picasso kept in his home on his shelf and drew. So some of the Picasso drawings and paintings are of this particular statue. Literally was stamped on the bottom, property of the Louvre. like it literally had that in French. And when the Mona Lisa was stolen, the person who stole the other stuff wanted reward money, but he didn't steal the Mona Lisa, but he had other things. And so he just basically sent out a note saying, "Hey, to dear Louvre, I can't tell you where the Mona Lisa is, but there are other items you may be interested in reclaiming. If you would like to know about those, just let me know what the reward will be." And in particular, he mentioned in particular one would be an Iberian bust. And Picasso was like, "Well, shoot, that's in my possession." And so he went to return it to a newspaper, basically went to a newspaper and left it there, because one of their anarchist friends was a journalist for that news, and he got arrested and brought in. And anyway, it's a fascinating story. But yes, the Mona Lisa is she's tricking us. I think is the point.
Yeah. For some reason, I know anarchists that was serious business. They threw a lot of bombs and stuff. But whenever somebody talks about anarchists, I just always laugh. You talk about Picasso hanging out with some anarchists.
Yeah, it really is kind of...
That sentence is funny.
It really is kind of funny. It really is kind of funny, because when you look at their, I guess, quote, their body of work, it's not great.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a Keystone Cops kind of thing.
Yeah, right. No, I was just so delighted that Picasso was a suspect. And was he actually arrested?
He was brought in for questioning. Yes.
Yeah.
He was made to appear to be questioned by police.
Okay.
And he was on trial. He was put on trial. He was one of the witnesses who was interrogated, and he basically gave up his friend in court. So,
snitches get stitches. I guess not. Things worked out okay for Picasso.
It worked out okay for him.
Okay, can we touch on Artemisia? Am I saying this right?
Gentileschi.
Artemisia Gentileschi.
Yeah. Artemisia Gentileschi is a female Italian Renaissance painter from the 1600s. So if you just sit with what I just said right there, that's a very unusual thing.
Yeah.
That there would be a woman from the 1600s who made a very successful living as an Italian Renaissance painter. Her father was a painter as well, named Orazio Gentileschi. And you can see Orazio's work and Artemisia's work in the Met and all over Italy. And Orazio was friends for a while with Caravaggio.
Okay.
They caroused together.
I guess if you hang out with Caravaggio, you're carousing.
Yes,
you
yes,
don't have
yes.
much choice.
That's right. Yeah, you're either that's probably.
A guy named Ben I went to junior high with.
Yeah, you're running from the police. But her story is a really kind of a tragic and sad one for things that happened to her. But also, like in recent years, she's become she's been sort of resurrected as a person of interest because a lot of her paintings are very violent, and they're usually, the violence is women committing violent acts against men. And she has a history of sexual assault, being sexually assaulted. And so the way that the story goes now, or at least in our cultural moment, is she's a figurehead now for the travail of women and misogyny and all this. But what's problematic about that is, in the era when she painted, painters were not painting primarily for self-expression. They were painting on commission, and she was living actually in a decidedly man's world and in a decidedly male-dominated vocation. And it wasn't just that men, most of the painters were men. It was that in order to fulfill the commissions that people were hiring, you needed to have kind of a knowledge of the affairs of government and things that women in that culture weren't typically players in. They didn't have seats at those tables. And so for her to do what she had to do, she had to have an interest in and be in the room for things that typically didn't have women involved. But it was so a lot of times what we will do in our cultural moment that we're in right now is we will look at somebody like Artemisia Gentileschi and we will say, you are a representative of the things that we value now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When she would look back and say, I don't know what you're talking about. That is not why I did what I did, or that's not what motivated me. And so when I started to research her life and study about her, that's kind of honestly where I thought the story was going to go. Mm-hmm. There's a professor at Covenant College in Chattanooga named Dr. Alyssa Weichbrot. Has she been on your...
She's been on this podcast.
Okay, so I went to spend time with her specifically to talk about Artemisia because she's an Artemisia Gentileschi scholar. And so I went and sat down with her and was talking about this. And I actually, in the chapter about her in the book, I quote Dr. Weichbrot quite a bit because she said it's problematic to take somebody like Artemisia and try to make her a feminist power icon because that's not why she painted what she painted. At least that's not why people created art in those days. It wasn't self-expression. It was work for hire, which is enhanced by the fact that she was a working painter for 50 years, and we have 57 paintings
now
from her.
Yeah, okay, but wait a minute. We just got finished talking about how Rembrandt, went from expressing his Thunder Puppy 26-year-old self
right.
to expressing his old man self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. His and I think the same would be true for Artemisia.
Okay.
Is that yes, you are when you're painting on commission, Rembrandt would have been a little bit different in that he was at a level where he had a lot of he would paint.
Well, wasn't always painting on commission.
It wasn't always painting on commission. But yes, the when you negotiate a work on commission, there's that, it's sort of like pre-production for a record or a book where you get together and you kind of agree with the person who's putting up the money what it is that you're going to do, but then the artist's job is to go then interpret the angle and the way they're going to do it and that kind of thing. But even for her, the subject matter, it's a lot of the more violent works are they're biblical stories, and they were popular stories at the time. Mm-hmm. Judith slaying Holofernes from
kings.
Yes, and then Susanna and the Elders, which is from the apocryphal additions to the Book of Daniel. They were popular stories at the time, and she painted the scenes.
Surely we had Jael with the tent peg.
Yeah, Jael. Yeah, there's another one. Yeah, that's another one where she has multiple copies or multiple versions of those similar stories, which tell you, okay, she's being hired to paint these scenes over and over.
We're going to hire the woman painter to do the woman.
Yeah, and so
violence.
So yes, obviously there is some there's an interpretation in the way that she's putting these, but what we can't do is we can't say she's this kind of independently wealthy artist who is painting for the museum wall or painting for some exhibition. She's not. She's painting because people have asked her to paint certain things, and so that's why most of the work that she did is lost to history.
Yeah,
is because it was work for hire, and her name probably wasn't even on most of it. It's not on a lot of her work.
Yeah. But I'm still, I'm super interested in the idea that and you may have gotten this from Dr. Warnbrook, if I'm saying her name right, that most of the Susanna paintings where the elders see her bathing, she's kind of slinky and kind of a little seductive.
Yes.
As if to sort of
when
put some blame on her.
When men would paint Susanna and the Elders, so Susanna, the story is she was basically observed bathing in a garden by two men who said, give us favors or we will say that you tried to seduce us and ruin your life. And so she has to choose, do I ruin my life by resisting them, or do I ruin my life by cooperating with them? Which way do I want to, which road to pain do I want to walk on? And so it was a story that was painted a lot, and there's a lot of when men would paint that scene, they would paint her as an object of desire, and often she would be looking at the viewer with this kind of coy
sort of come hither.
Yeah. And Artemisia's she looks
like a woman who's actually taking a bath.
Yes, and she's got her neck contorted and she's turning away and she's trying to get away from. And that was a very different interpretation. Yeah. But she's interpreting it as a woman. She's interpreting as she's relating to Susanna. She's not relating to the men. And she did that painting, when she was 17 years old. Really? Yeah. Wow. Yeah. An interesting story about that is it was the next year that she was assaulted. She was assaulted by. So when you look at that Susanna and the Elders painting by Artemisia, she's sitting on a stone bench. Yeah. That matters, and the reason it matters is because at 17 she did not have the technical skill to paint perspective. And so normally Susanna is set in a garden, and the scenery is of a lush garden that goes on, but she didn't know how to do that. And so she put her on a bench so that she wouldn't have to deal with the third dimension too much. And so her father hires a person named Agostino Tassi, who's a master of perspective, to teach her that particular skill. He happens to be the one who assaults her. Wow. So she is assaulted by the person who her father hired to teach her the skill that is missing in Susanna and the Elders, which is a painting of a woman that looks like her being assaulted by... Yeah.
Wow.
So, it's
a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. Yeah.
It's a lot of not feeling protected.
Yeah, sad stories.
Yeah.
All
right. Tell me about something that surprised you as you researched and wrote this book.
Several of the chapters. One of the reasons I go after these different chapters and write them is because I'm curious myself as to what the story is. So it's not like I come to it and I think, I've got this great story, I just really want to tell it. It's more of I'm curious about Artemisia, or I'm curious about Norman Rockwell, for example. And he would be a good example of somebody where I go in thinking I'm going to write about one thing, and then as I research his story, it unfolds into this completely different thing. And so there are two chapters that really kind of stand out to me as things that took me places I was not expecting to go. And one was on Norman Rockwell, where when you think of Norman Rockwell, the odds are pretty good that most people are going to think of a coffee table book of Saturday Evening Post covers.
Yeah.
And rightly so, because most of his body of work was just that. He was an illustrator. He referred to himself, and other people referred to him as an illustrator, not an artist, or not a painter. And so it was kind of this idea of what he does is not high art.
Yeah.
It's kind of sentimental, but what he was doing is he was, as an illustrator, he was telling America's story back to herself through these Saturday Evening Post covers. And so World War II, the presidential elections, all kinds of things, where he was painting these scenes of American life. And he was painting them as he understood American life. And so it's very kind of sentimental and humorous and full of all kinds of warmth, but also hard things like war and the reality of war being told in things like a son going off to war or a son returning home from war. But very white. And when he was painting for the Saturday Evening Post, one of the kind of general rules for the illustrators was, if you're going to paint people of color, they should be in positions of servitude. And so you've got...
you said that was a rule at Saturday Evening Post, the stated rule?
It was a spoken rule from his editor to him. And so he has one of a boy on a train car trying to figure out how to pay the bill, and there's a black waiter standing there, ready to he's calculating the tip, basically. And but then Rockwell is painting over this long period of time, and during this period of time, we start moving into civil rights and desegregation, and he read the story of Ruby Bridges, the little kindergarten girl going into a desegregated school in the South, being escorted by U.S. Marshals. And so he paints this painting called The Problem We All Live With, which is her, a little girl carrying her books, African-American girl, being escorted by marshals, and tomatoes splattered on the wall behind her. And the Post didn't love this. They didn't love him kind of getting into the fray a little bit. Yeah. And he felt like, but this is what I do. Yeah. Is I'm telling America's story back to her, and this is part of the story that's happening. And what you see in him is you see him changing. Yeah. You see him recognizing his own culpability in the way that the story has been told. Wow. And so he makes these decisions to change. He has a painting called Do Unto Others, which is one where he decidedly departed from the Post's counsel by painting all of these people of color, Indian, African American, Hispanic, Chinese, and their religions. Yeah. And they're all standing together facing the viewer. And if you look at the bottom left corner, there is a African American kindergarten girl holding books. Oh. And it is Ruby Bridges. And it'll take your breath away when you realize, oh my word, this is what he's doing. Yeah. So then,
and I guess at this point in his career, Saturday Evening Post couldn't really tell him, they couldn't fire him.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing: is when the Saturday Evening Post would run an edition by any other painter on the cover, they'd sell 50,000 copies, and when it was Norman Rockwell, they'd sell 300,000 copies. Yeah. So they could. Right. But it was sure. But it was a tension. It was a point of tension, and so he actually moved over to Look magazine, and they wanted him to. They didn't give him covers, but they gave him interior spreads, and he painted this painting called. It's got a lot of names, but Murder in Mississippi is one of the names. There was a movie, Mississippi Burning, with Gene Hackman from the 80s, early 90s maybe. Which is about this scene, but he painted this image of three community activists basically being lynched because they were trying to get to help African Americans enroll as voters in the South.
It looks like it's on the moon.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, the painting that's in the book, I know talking about a painting on an audible format probably isn't the best thing in the world.
Maybe people should buy your book.
They should buy the book.
Retail.
But when you see this painting, it's only half of what he actually painted. What he actually painted did involve the group of people, which included police officers who did the lynching. They were in the scene, and he realized if I actually take that half out and all you see is their shadows, it's even more menacing, and it shows you just how alone and how powerless these victims were, which were one African American man and two Jewish guys from New York, but that was a surprising story because I didn't really understand that about Norman Rockwell. I thought, I'm just going to be talking about a guy who was an illustrator and maybe didn't get the credit he deserved, and instead it ends up being a story about this painter who learns things about his country and his subject matter, but also about himself, and changes as a person because of the things that he is observing, but also because of his vocation and his calling to tell the story as honestly as he could. Yeah. And it's profound.
Wow. Love it. Maybe one more surprise. Got another surprise?
This one is it's a little bit of a scoop, I guess. But originally I had a chapter in this book about Thomas Kinkade. And I had some friends who said, you need to write a chapter about Thomas Kinkade. And I laughed. And they said, no, we're serious. Not about his art, but about the story of his life. And how does a phenomenon like this happen where you have this painter who paints these kind of banal scenes amass $3 billion, an empire worth $3 billion with a B. And so I wrote this chapter about him, and it was fascinating, and it was heartbreaking, and it was a really critical story of particularly kind of the American Christian swag industry kind of thing. How he was very vocal about saying, I'm painting a world without a fall. And the people who said, that's exactly what I want in my living room, were people who claimed to be Christians, which is a faith that the necessity of Christ is because of the reality of a fall. And so I wrote this chapter, and it was not complimentary at all toward his art. But it was very empathetic toward the man. And so my editor said, when I submitted it, he said, I don't think you should include this chapter. And I said, why? And he said, well, for a couple of reasons. He said, I think, and this is very wise. He said, this book will constitute now 20 chapters that you've written about art. And in all of the other 19, you are putting forth the artist as somebody to engage with in a meaningful way, and their work as something to engage with in a meaningful way. And this is the only one where, while you do that with the painter, you don't do that with his work. And he said, my concern is that those who don't like Thomas Kinkade may kind of read this as a victory lap. But you'll also have a lot of readers who have Thomas Kinkade things in their homes, and they may feel scolded by you, and I don't think that's your intent with this. And I thought, that's actually good. So I thought, well, what am I going to write about, and how can I kind of come at this theme? And so I ended up writing about the Hudson River School painters. And interestingly enough, it ended up dealing with a lot of the same themes as the Kinkade. Yeah, because the Kinkade painting, the thing with the Thomas Kinkade paintings was he's painting a world that not even he could live in, because it was too tranquil and it was too sedate. But the Hudson River School painters were painting the untamed American frontier that the European immigrants and settlers were going to go try to tame. And the Hudson River School painters were all painters kind of in that New York area, the Catskills. And their job was they would go out. They didn't all know each other or anything like that. They're called the Hudson River School because of the work they did. And that was, they would go out into these wild frontiers and paint these enormous vistas and bring them back, and people would look, and it would be, this is the country that awaits. And what they were painting was something that you would look at and you would say, how can we even survive that?
Yeah.
And so it was kind of the inverse of the Kincaid painting. You know, he painted a mountain scene and put a gazebo in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You know, and they would paint these vistas where you would look at it and you would think, I would never return from that alive.
Yeah.
And so that chapter really is an exploration of the difference between the beautiful and the sublime.
Yeah.
And the sublime, the difference being that beauty attracts us and wants us to, and makes us want to consume it and possess it. Yeah. The sublime takes our breath away with its awe, but there's also a terror often involved in it. It's standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon.
An alligator. Yeah.
And so the word sublime means under the lintel. So it's as high as you can go before you break through the plane that will see you destroyed. It's Moses wanting to see God, and God saying, I will pass by you in this way, but if I show you any more, you can't.
Yeah.
That's the sublime.
Yeah.
That's the edge.
Getting close to the top of Long's Peak in Colorado. Just sort of looking at that last little, that last huge thing. That was when I understood this is what the sublime is. I know it's not going to follow me, but it feels dangerous. It feels like something, this is so gorgeous, and it feels overwhelming and a little dangerous.
Yeah, and it's that idea that there's something in us that's made for that, because we're made in the image of God, and we're made for a relationship with Him, that He is more magnificent than we can handle, such as we are. Mm-hmm. And yet there's that longing to draw near and go into, and the I guess the thing I'll wrap up with on this story is that one of the things that show up a lot in the Hudson River School paintings are Native people. And one of the things that's so stark about it is they're showing this kind of world back to settlers who are saying, oh, that's what we have to go tame. But when you see the people living in there, you see people whose mindset is completely different. And that is, to live here, we need to respect and yield to what living in a place like this requires of us. We're not going to tame it. We're going to cooperate with it. And so their housing is portable because they can't stay in one place for 4 seasons. And you know they have to go where the food is rather than the food come to them. And there's this kind of living off of the land where they have understood that to live in this we need to submit to the parameters of what it imposes on us rather than us go tame it and make it a concrete jungle. Yeah,
so good. All right, we got to wrap up here. We've gone way over. I'm not even going to let you tell us who are the writers that make you want to write. So sorry, you had your chance, but you went over.
That's fair. That's fair.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
The Habit Podcast is brought to you by The Rabbit Room, where art nourishes community and community nourishes art. You can support their work, including this podcast, by becoming a member. Visit rabbitroom.com/membership. Special thanks as well to Taylor Leonard for letting us use her song Diamonds as the theme music for the Habit Podcast. You can learn more about Taylor and follow her work at taylorleonard.com. The Habit Membership is a library of resources for writers by me, Jonathan Rogers. More importantly, The Habit is a hub of community where like-minded writers gather to discuss their work and give each other a little more courage. Find out more at thehabit.co.